Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This quote fundamentally changed the way I view tattooed women. Many tattoos, I realized, aren't just designs or fashion statements. They are psychological messages, silent signals inked into the skin. While not everyone may recognize it, once you do, you can't ignore it. Tattoos aren't merely about style or rebellion. They're about something deeper, often rooted in pain. When you look at women who are heavily tattooed, you may see confidence, expression, and defiance. But beneath those vibrant designs, a quiet pattern emerges, a pattern of pain. Many women with tattoos are not expressing confidence. They're expressing wounds they may not even be fully aware of. This observation didn't come to me overnight. I started asking questions. Why do so many women get tattoos during emotional turmoil? Why do the symbols they choose often relate to grief, trauma, or identity conflict? The deeper I looked, the clearer the connection became. What I realized is that tattoos are not just about body art, they're about the unconscious mind. Jung spoke of the shadow, the hidden repressed parts of ourselves that we deny or hide from others. The shadow doesn't disappear. It waits, ready to express itself when given the chance. And one of the ways it shows up is through symbols, which are powerful representations of our inner world. Tattoos are essentially symbols we wear permanently. Think about it. Why would someone tattoo a place they can't see, like their back? It's not necessarily for them. It's for others, or perhaps for something deeper. Tattoos can be a cry for attention, a need to be seen, or an attempt to regain control over a part of oneself that felt powerless. Jung believed that we often mistake identity for healing, and that's the trap. Some women don't get tattoos because they've healed. They get them because they're still bleeding, still carrying the weight of their pain. The tattoo becomes armor, not art, a barrier that says, "Don't look too closely." As I continued to reflect on this, it became clear that we're not living in an age of pure self-expression. We're in an age of sublimation, where pain is transformed into something aesthetic. What was once hidden in the unconscious is now made visible through symbols inked on the skin. Tattoos have become more than just a form of rebellion or self-expression. They are a way of projecting unresolved pain outwardly, instead of working through it inwardly. Symbols like serpents, skulls, swords, angel wings, eyes, broken clocks, and chained hearts aren't random designs. They're archetypal. Jung said, "The unconscious speaks in the language of myth and symbol." And when a woman chooses one of these symbols for her body, she's tapping into something ancient and deeply personal. A broken clock, for example, isn't just a design. It's the mark of a past moment that has frozen her in time. It's not merely body art. It's a visual representation of an emotional experience that continues to shape her. But it's not just about the ink. It's about the persona. Jung's concept of the persona is the mask we wear to survive societal expectations. For centuries, women were expected to be soft, nurturing, and gentle. So, what happens when a woman walks into the world covered in dark, sharp ink and defiant symbols? She's not simply expressing herself. She's rejecting the old persona, the soft and gentle mask society demanded. She's ripping it off and choosing to wear a different one. However, Jung warned that when we replace one mask with another, we're not always liberated. We may just be wearing a different costume, one that doesn't necessarily reveal who we truly are. The danger lies in the false sense of identity that arises when we define ourselves through rebellion or contrast, rather than from a place of true self-awareness. For many women, tattoos aren't just about making a statement. They're about reclaiming control. When asked why they got their tattoos, many describe the experience as something addictive or necessary for coping. They feel empowered by the ink, but often, that empowerment masks deeper emotional wounds like abandonment, grief, or trauma. Tattoos, in this sense, can become a way to regain agency over a body that once felt like a battleground. As I delved deeper into the psychology of tattoos, I began to recognize a troubling but undeniable pattern. Tattoos are not just a superficial form of self-expression. For many, they serve as a way to cope with unresolved trauma. Women, in particular, are often drawn to tattoos during significant emotional upheaval, breakups, deaths, betrayals, or personal crises. These aren't just impulsive decisions. They're emotional responses to pain, often made in an attempt to regain control over their lives and bodies when everything else feels out of control. Tattoos can become a ritual, a way to mark a painful moment or a turning point in a person's life. The ink, in this case, is not just a form of expression but a tool for self-preservation. When the body feels like a battleground of emotions, a tattoo can serve as a form of armor. It's not about showing art to the world. It's about hiding something deeper. It's about covering the wounds that still haven't healed. And while this may bring a temporary sense of control or relief, it's not a permanent fix. Jung called this the false persona, the identity we create to protect ourselves from our vulnerabilities. Many women with tattoos may have been told their entire lives to be gentle, to be nurturing, and to play a specific role in society. Tattoos can act as a rejection of that role, a symbolic act of defiance. But, as Jung warned, replacing one mask with another doesn't lead to true liberation. The new persona, no matter how strong or defiant it seems, may simply be another mask that doesn't reflect the true self beneath. When I examined this more closely, it became apparent that many tattooed women don't realize the deeper psychological forces at play. They may think the tattoo is a reflection of their newfound strength or confidence, but in reality, it's often a manifestation of their unhealed pain. Tattoos can be addictive because they offer a brief respite from emotional turmoil, but they don't provide the kind of healing that comes from within. As one tattoo fades into another, the pain is buried deeper, not resolved. Psychological research backs up this observation. Studies show that women with emotional dysregulation, past trauma, or borderline traits are more likely to engage in body modification. Tattoos, piercings, and other alterations often reflect a need for control over the body when emotions feel overwhelming. But the question remains, what part of themselves are they trying to control, and what void are they attempting to fill with ink? While tattoos can be a way of processing pain, they are not always a solution. In fact, they can sometimes trap a person in the very emotional state they are trying to escape. When we use tattoos as a form of self-expression, without addressing the root causes of our pain, we risk reinforcing the very wounds we seek to hide. Tattoos can become a form of emotional camouflage. They cover up the raw spots, but they don't heal them. They can symbolize empowerment, but they can also symbolize the fact that the person still hasn't worked through their trauma. Jung's concept of individuation is key here. He believed that true healing comes not from external markers or symbols, but from integrating the parts of ourselves that we've repressed. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, of embracing the entirety of who we are, including the parts of us we try to deny or hide. It's not about adding more symbols to our lives or our bodies, but about confronting the ones we already carry inside. True healing isn't about covering up our pain. It's about understanding and integrating it. In Jungian terms, tattoos can be seen as attempts to externalize pain, symbols of something unresolved that the person can point to but not yet understand. It's not enough to wear the symbol. We must also confront what it represents. Tattoos may provide temporary relief, but they can also reinforce an identity tied to pain, rather than helping to transcend it. One of the most profound insights Jung had was that the unconscious is incredibly clever. It doesn't ask for permission to speak. It whispers through symbols, habits, and dreams. When the unconscious is ignored, it shouts louder through external expressions, like tattoos. This is why, as we continue to decorate our bodies with symbols of trauma, it's essential to ask, what are we trying to cover, and why? Tattoos are not inherently negative or harmful. They can symbolize healing, transformation, or personal growth. However, The line between expression and suppression is thin. When tattoos are used to avoid confronting painful emotions, they can become a barrier to true self-awareness. What began as an attempt to reclaim control over one's body may end up as a symbol of unresolved pain, still waiting to be healed. The real challenge, then, is distinguishing between expression and suppression. Tattoos can be a form of self-expression, but when used to cover pain without understanding it, they can also be a form of suppression. As Jung pointed out, the unconscious mind doesn't simply fade away. It makes itself known, often in the most unexpected ways. Tattoos, especially when chosen impulsively or during emotional turmoil, are often one of those ways. What we think of as self-expression could, in fact, be an unconscious attempt to manage inner chaos. Jung's idea of shadow work becomes essential here. The shadow consists of all the parts of ourselves that we suppress or deny, the parts we think of as unacceptable or unworthy. When we get a tattoo, we may not realize that we're choosing a symbol of that shadow. We may think we're simply expressing our individuality, our strength, or our journey, but often the tattoos reflect something deeper, an unacknowledged part of ourselves. The snake, the skull, the broken heart, these aren't just designs. They are representations of the emotional or psychological wounds we carry. But the danger is in mistaking these external symbols for true healing. Tattoos can feel empowering, but without the internal work, they remain a projection of our unresolved issues. The more we identify with the symbols, the more we risk becoming tethered to the pain they represent. Rather than being an outward expression of strength, the tattoo could be a cry for help, an attempt to externalize what can't be fully processed internally. What makes this particularly complicated is the addictive nature of the tattooing process. The more tattoos someone gets, the more they may feel a sense of control, a sense of agency over their body and their pain. But is this sense of control truly liberating, or is it just reinforcing the cycle? The emotional satisfaction of a new tattoo can provide temporary relief, but it doesn't lead to the deep transformation that comes from confronting the root causes of pain. Jung warned that true healing comes not from adding more layers to our lives, but from stripping away the false layers we've created. A tattoo may express something about who we are at the moment, but it won't change the pain we haven't processed. Without the willingness to confront that pain, tattoos may become a way of masking it, of holding on to it, rather than letting it go.